2, 1, action.
Great. Good evening, everyone. I would like to call to order the Croton Harmon Board of Education business meeting for January 12th, 2023. And please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and
Born.
recommended action that the Board of Education approves the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second. On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, motion carries. All right, well, good evening again, everyone, and happy new year. Thank you to those joining us in person and everyone who's watching on live stream or on the recording. I hope that all of our students, families, and staff enjoyed rest, relaxation, and some quality time with loved ones over the holiday break. I'd like to take a moment to again thank our community for coming out to vote last month and for your strong support of the Future Facilities Capital Project. I know I share my excitement with so many people. As we look forward to beginning work on this project. I will leave it to Superintendent Walker and our ex officio trustee, Molly Levitt, to share the reviews of the many exciting happenings that in the district leading up to break in their reports. But I did want to highlight that the CET Kindness Club Variety Show in honor of Debbie Liebert raised more than $10,000. I was in attendance at the evening show and it was wonderful to see so many people who were out to show their support. So thank you. And lastly tonight, we will hear from our Assistant Superintendent for Business, Denise Harrington Cohen, as she presents the 2023-2024 budget preview and takes us through the budget priorities and revenue and expense assumptions. This follows on from our preliminary budget discussion last month, and there will be several more presentations and information sessions in the months to come. We look forward to engaging with the community throughout this process. Thank you. This concludes my president's report. And so now we will move on to hearing the public. We ask that anyone who would like to address the board uses the podium and states your name. You can give your email or contact information in the sign-up sheet that's provided. And we ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes.
My name is Ed Riley, I live on the Field Drive. A number of things I want to talk about today. One, since this, I have a great, first of all, I'd like to wish you all a happy new year. To you and your families. You are a function, a legislative body, which operates under the legislature and the executive of the state of New York. Unfortunately, the legislature and the executive of the state of New York has a terrible history of corruption going back to last century, maybe 1800, but it's specifically alarming what's happened at the executive level and talking to your students about respect and so forth like that. Thank God you don't see much of it down at this level of the village. I may disagree with you, but I don't think, there's crime and corruption. We have lost in this state 5 executives to jail. One missed going to jail because he stepped down and the guy that took over his job said, now we'll prosecute him, right? That's Patterson. But we've had Cuomo. We just had the Lieutenant Governor Benjamin. We had Hevesy, who's the sole trustee of all the big pension plans in the state of New York. We had Schneiderman, who's the Attorney General. And we had Spitzer, who was the governor and the Attorney General. And we've had 40 legislators go to jail, they're in jail, or coming from jail. So you have quite a job explaining how to respect all these people. Maybe you respect the office. So item 2, racism. Racism, the accusations of racism are made so casually about a serious thing. And most people that they call racist, they're not racist. They made a stupid comment. They said something the wrong man told them or whatever. But when you're a public official, you're a higher level. We have a problem on this board with people saying things and appointed to positions to investigate it or to create policy on it. The one I want to bring your attention is a black county legislator from Greenberg. Her name is Jewel Williams Johnson. She was presiding over a legislative hearing of the Westchester County, New York. And she was the co-chairman with Colin Smith, who is the legislature from North End in Peekskill, and the other legislator next to him from Yorktown, Gashi. In this public hearing, this committee hearing, she was talking about the Buffalo incident where 12 Black American citizens were killed by somebody who should have been handled in their high school disciplinary, and the police shot 10 innocent Black men. Now, she was so upset by this, and everybody was upset by this, but she said this. She said if that perpetrator was a 17-year-old white kid, if that perpetrator was a Black kid, the cops would have killed him. He would have been assassinated. Now, that's a lie, we know. Casual accusations of racism are to be condemned. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have no other speakers. I will turn it over to Superintendent Walker for his report.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And I join Sarah in wishing our entire school district community a very happy new year. I hope it's a wonderful, happy and healthy one for everyone. Wanted to begin, and I will say, knowing that I have Denise and a wonderful budget presentation to follow, and as well as Molly highlighting several of the same things that I was planning to talk about, I'm going to shoot for brevity in my remark this evening, but we'll start as we always do by recognizing and welcoming new members of our team, of our faculty and staff through the Tiger Welcome Initiative. And it's my pleasure to welcome aboard to our team, Mr. Russell Bauer. Russell is a new member of the transportation team. As a driver, he's actually a retired transportation safety director and has joined our team because he had heard of what an outstanding group that is through the various connections that the transportation world kind of realm has within the region. A fun fact about Russell is that in his free time, he enjoys looking at and adding to what is an apparently very extensive baseball memorabilia collection. Actually pulled out his phone and showed me several pictures of amazing amounts of memorabilia he has. I asked him to show me anything from the team the last time the Mets won the World Series, and he said he did not have anything that dated back that far. But he has basically within his house what a lot of us have, some of us have in our attics or garages. So he's done a great job of displaying that and takes great pride in talking about it. He's a member of the team in kind of what we would call a floating role, meaning he gets a chance on a regular basis to be driving different routes. And so now already knows all the different routes throughout the district and outside of the district, as well as getting a chance to participate within the transportation center as well. Really a terrific guy. So welcome to the Tigers, Russell. Also my pleasure to welcome CET part-time strings instructor, Patricia Santos. Patricia's, in addition, of course, to working with our students at CET, is a freelance cellist and works as part of a nonprofit which brings music education to incarcerated communities. And when she's not at work and doing other volunteer and freelance work, she enjoys spending time with her husband, who's also a musician, and their two dogs, who she describes as quite a handful. So I look forward to seeing some pictures of them and welcome a really talented musician to our team. Welcome to Patricia. Speaking of talented musicians, I want to take just a moment to thank the entire music department and all of our students at all levels for 3 really outstanding experiences. The CET Sing Along and Read Aloud featuring Mr. Griffiths, as well as the PVC and high school winter concerts. All were just terrific and heartwarming and a pleasure to be a part of. I did want to note one thing that I thought was really neat and kind of a testament to the not just the talent, but the dedication of our music faculty. And if you look on the right side of the screen, the column that's bound in orange on each side, the upper left-hand picture, of course, is Mrs. O'Brien conducting at the PVC concert. And you'll see her right hand is involved in conducting, orchestrating. Her left hand is holding a sheet of music that fell from the students' music stand. And so she actually was holding it in her left hand while conducting with the right. And a parent after the concert came over to me and said, "Steve, I took a picture of this. You have to see this. This is how great the faculty here is." So I wanted to give her a shout out in this kind of public forum And to the entire music faculty, just bravo and bravo, outstanding. Any number of different holiday events, of course, took place right before the break, including the CHHS Pride Club's gingerbread decorating contest that John and I, along with Dr. Dubak, had a chance to participate in, as well as Molly. As I said earlier, I will now say this in public. I think my effort at turning my gingerbread man into a turkey vulture was underappreciated by the judges. But I do respect the winners of that competition. That was a lot of fun and a really well-attended event. The CET food drive, of course, always an incredibly heartfelt and wonderful and warm part of the holiday season, as well as PVC celebrating the entire week with some outstanding sweaters, headwear, and many things happening at PVC that were celebratory that week. Also want to make mention to how busy our student athletes have been before and during the break. I know that Molly will make some mention, of course, to the Maitland tournament. So I would just say I wanted to give a shout out to some of our student athletes who performed incredibly well during that tournament. Emma Windrum, who was, of course, from the girls basketball team, who was announced as the MVP of that tournament. Lucia Thorson, all tournament honors, as well as on the boys side, Orlando Gomez, all tournament honors. And in wrestling, Jake Camilleri, who before the break was nominated as one of the Low HUD student athletes of the week. So we congratulate them, all of their teams, coaches, and all of our student athletes on an outstanding winter season so far. I would echo Sarah's sentiments of tremendous appreciation and gratitude to really all members of our school district community for their engagement in the entire process of the future that led up to the future facilities bond vote on the 13th. Your questions, your engagement made the project better, made our communication better, made our outreach better. So I echo Sarah's sentiments and thank everyone who was a part of that effort. But I did want to take a moment to mention and thank two of my colleagues to my left who were instrumental parts of this. John, your ability to design, to envision, to think through how we best communicate a truly wide-ranging idea made this the success that it's been so far. So I want to thank you, sir, very much for your leadership on this. And while there were any number of people in this room and out of this room who were instrumental in making this happen, there's really one person without whom this wouldn't have happened at all, and that's Denise. From the beginning, your vision and your ability to pull together some incredibly complex funding apparatus, as well as the logistics of this project, were exceptional. And we saw that the community supported that at an incredibly high level. So I thank you as well. And we look forward to sharing what comes next with our entire school district community. And I did just want to take another moment, as Sarah mentioned, to thank everybody who was involved on December 2nd and in all the preparation, the rehearsals, the practices that led up to that evening's variety show, specifically Marlena Horton, who was just an incredible dynamo, just a remarkable person to pull this all together. Whenever we have large numbers of people in our system together, we talk about the concepts of family and community and what that means. And we talk a lot about how a community and a family succeeds together and struggles together. We celebrate things together, we mourn together. And I thought that evening exemplified that concept of family and community. There, certainly there were tears shed. We mourned Debbie's loss, but I think more than anything else, I think she'd be happy with this. We celebrated her life and her contributions to this system. We laughed a ton and we got closer as I believe as a community. And certainly the energy backstage that night was something special. I think my colleagues to my left would agree. And I would just say, the sheer joy of getting a chance to be a part of that is something that I know I will take with me for a long time. And I believe that Debbie is very proud of everybody who was a part of that. So I will conclude my remarks with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I'll turn it over to Molly Levitt for her student ex officio report.
I hope to have to follow this. Yeah, but I just want to say again to everyone, Happy New Year. I hope everyone had great holidays. I just wanted to start off. There's a lot of ground to cover. It's been a while since I've done one of my reports, so I'm going to start off in December. The winter concert and the the winter concert in CHHS. It happened on December 6th. Band, chorus, and strings performed, and yeah, it was a fun time. And then also on the last day of school, December 23rd, the three groups did a performance during the school day for the students, which was really fun. And also on December 22nd, the PTSA sponsored a hot chocolate bar that was run by Spirit Club, and it was super fun. It was free hot chocolate, and that's my segue to plug the PTSA. It's really, really easy for a student to become a member, easier than I thought even, and it's only $10. You can just go to their website, and at the high school level, they really do want students to be a part of it. And the PTSA, all the money that they get, they don't want to make a profit. So all the money that they get is going towards things that will enrich the student experience, like field trips and grants for projects and things. So they're really doing great work. And I think everyone in the high school should consider joining. And also, yes, the Make Them tournament was on December 16th and 17th. It was really fun. There was great energy, and girls basketball won, right? And the boys placed second place, so we did really well. Also on December 8th, in the high school, we had our club mixer, which is basically just the officers of different clubs. We got together and we had snacks, and we talked about basically the different ways that clubs can help each other. And there were so many good ideas being thrown around in that room. I can't even list all of them, but like off the top of my head, Triumph, the Music Honor Society, was saying that they could maybe see about having providing some sort of music for when Activism Club, when we do our Take Back the Night March in April. So just all these connections that you wouldn't even think about happening. Also, and then now for stuff that is coming up, the CHHS round robin is happening tomorrow, January 13th. So the freshmen, sophomores, and juniors get to see their course registration options for the upcoming year. And that actually includes new dual enrollment courses that are happening for the first time for next year. I believe in physics, EPS history, and AP statistics. So students can take those classes and then they get SUNY credit. And dual enrollment is such a great opportunity. So I'm glad that's going to be start to be offered. Also on CHHS, the second quarter ends on January 20th. And also Choose Planning is underway. So we recently got our mentor and coordinator assignments, and we're meeting with our mentors, all the seniors, and we're having initial conversations about what we think, what we'd be interested in, what our placements are going to be, and then we submit our tentative placements by January 27th. And I forgot to mention, the grade 9 and 10 parent night was on January 4th, and they discussed scheduling and course selections for the parents who might not be as familiar with the process. And I think, and then my last thing is I want to give an update on what we've been talking about in SFC. So the first thing is like I said, we have been working with the PTSA. We've been talking about the events that we can do, so how we can partner with them. Some ideas that we had were a cultural potluck, a flag football tournament, staff versus students event, something like a school dance, because that's been an idea that's sort of been floating around for years. Obviously not prom, something sort of like homecoming or spring fling. So those were some ideas that we had. And then we also started discussing election outreach and how we'll reach out to the student body with election information closer to the budget and the board elections in May, because a lot of the seniors will be eligible to vote then. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Molly. All right, now we will turn it over to Denise Harrington-Cohen for her report and budget discussion.
You. All mine, correct? Okay, so tonight we'll be providing a preview of our 23-24 school budget. This is our second budget presentation. And I'm going to ask Superintendent Walker to start us off to discuss some of our strategic goals and questions that drive our budget decisions.
Thank you, Denise. I will say just very, very briefly that I think we all would agree that budgets are a function of dollars and cents, but as much as they are about finances, they're also about vision and values. And that's what excites me about this process each year that we get a chance to go through it, is because we get a chance to have a conversation with our school district community about how our budget reflects our vision for the future and the values that we have, and placing students at the center of the work that we do. And so I know that this board is very, very familiar with our four guiding questions, as well as the work that our team is beginning to do with regard to our strategic planning goals. And so I just wanted to put on everybody's radar that as we go through this process over the next few months, we'll be looking to anchor our decisions, our discussion, our vision, and our values around how this work, how this budget advances the pursuit of answers of these guiding questions, as well as reflects the broader vision that's laid out within those strategic goals. So I look forward to those discussions. Denise, it's all yours.
For some reason, I'm not advancing.
I think you should advance now. I have to
Okay.
click back on.
Okay. So this is a preview of our budget development timeline. It's a condensed version, and we went into great detail on this at our last budget session. As you can see, this is a year-long process. It's September through February, we develop our assumptions and forecasts, meet with our principals and directors to identify their needs, visions, priorities. We begin our budget discussions with the public and the Board of Education and presentations. We will analyze the governor's budget, evaluate departmental requests, and then determine their feasibility and begin prioritizing them. We generally have our state aid projections from the governor's office by now. We do not. In March March through May, the final state aid numbers are determined. We will seek to have the superintendent's budget adopted in April. I'm sorry, that's yes, in April, along with our property tax report card, followed by the public budget hearing and our vote in May. And our May vote is always the Tuesday, May 16th in March. May, thank you. Thank you. Some of our budget priorities are to keep our students at the center of our decision-making, preserve the integrity of our educational programs, ensure fiscal responsibility and accountability to our residents and taxpayers, maintain compliance with the allowable tax levy, support the goals of our Board of Education, and this list can go on indefinitely. To get it down to this was so challenging. Certainly aligning our budget with guiding questions and our strategic plan, provide high quality professional learning for our staff, preserve and enhance our learning spaces and campus, the atmosphere here, and of course to fulfill our contractual obligations and comply with any state and federal new and existing mandates. So this is generally where we begin. With our revenue assumptions. As a district, outside of traditional funding sources, we have a very limited ability to raise funds. So identifying revenue capacity early on is strategically a very good first step. So this graph to the right represents our current, it's our projected, that was projected in this year's budget, revenue analysis, just to give you an idea of the representation of each revenue budget category. So as you can see, the lion's share, the blue represents the tax levy. Then we have Westchester County sales tax and miscellaneous revenue in orange. The yellow represents our state aid, and the light blue represents the balance, which is our 755 fund balance and reserves. So as you can see, our state aid represents a little over 14% of our revenue budget. Though no state aid numbers are in, we are again expecting them on the 19th. Our preliminary projections are trending well above that, probably closer to 19%. This is due primarily to increases in foundation aid and building aid, some transportation aid as well. So 23-24 marks the third and final year of the foundation aid phase-in. So we are expected to receive the final 50%, which is approximately an additional $730,000. Additionally, in looking at the our assessments and property values and wealth, it appears as though our adjusted gross income for our community has dropped significantly. So the funding formula looks at the gross income for the district for 2020, and that dropped significantly, which increases our need ratio, which then in turn increases our aid, our foundation aid eligibility. So that making us a higher need district and generating more aid, we're expecting to see a considerable amount more in foundation aid, which is ideal timing because our ARP and CRISA federal funds are falling off. So we will be having to absorb some of the staffing and so forth that was encompassed in those grants. But essentially, state aid is allocated based on wealth and demographic need. And according to my preliminary projections, that need has gone up. So we will be expecting to receive more, and we'll know a little bit more on the 19th. And again, that's just the executive proposal that will come in January, February, the legislative proposal, followed by the enacted budget in April, which is the final numbers. Also, we're expecting to see an increase in transportation aid. Our capital project from 2020 is now generating state building aid for the district. Our interest income, our investments are thriving in this economic environment. So we are projecting close to an additional $200,000 in interest income for next year. Miscellaneous revenue, so we receive a percentage of Westchester County sales tax. We are also projecting a slight increase in that as well. Lastly, our tax levy. So I'll get into this a little bit deeper in the next slide, but our allowable growth factor is projected at 2%. The tax-based growth factor is up from 1.00025 to 0.00039, which doesn't seem as significant, but it does impact the overall levy. We do not anticipate any pilot impacts for 23-24. Last year, we were expecting one to come on, but I spoke with the village this past week, and that is not supposed to take effect until subsequent year. So the allowable growth factor. So on the top right is the controller's office. I had to do a little jimmying of the slide here, but our inflation factor, if you look at the far right, you'll see the 8. Can I point like this? I guess.
It has a laser pointer, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay. Oh, there you go. Thank you. So our inflation factor right now is 8.0%. It actually went down today. It's actually below 7 right now. And then, as you know, the tax levy growth factor cannot exceed 2%. That's the maximum. So regardless of inflation, the maximum growth factor will be 2%. We do not, if you see the line below that coming in January, that line, once issued by the controller's office, will determine the allowable growth factor, which we are 100% projecting at 2% with an inflation factor that high. So the graph below, it's hard to see. Greg, can you just pull the graph up a little bit so that they can see the legend?
I might not be able to do it.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
So I will just put a line here. So the orange represents, thanks, John. So the orange represents the allowable growth factor, and the gray represents the consumer price index or inflation. So as you see, in the earlier years, they were very close. 2022, the inflation factor was 4.7, yet the allowable growth factor was 2%, and this year it's up to 8.6. So remember, our expenditures are based on the gray line. So we are accountable to inflation for all of our expenditures, yet our growth in revenues is capped at 2%. So we are, we are navigating that as best we can. Let's go to our next slide here. So this figure will be finalized, I believe by this is required by March 1st. So I'm expecting that these rates will come out later this month in January. Tax-based growth factor. So this is brick and mortar growth within our community. It measures changes in assessments based on construction, even large equipment, growth and improvements in any of the properties in our district. That, as you can see, it's gone up slightly. This factor will be multiplied by our tax levy to add an additional growth amount. It's a very insignificant amount. As you can see, it's back down to where we were in about 2019. It shot up last year, the year before, during COVID, and now has stabilized. And we will submit our tax levy on March 1st. Expenditure assumptions. So a large part of our budget, half of our budget, is salary related. Our contractual obligations for existing bargaining units are, the majority of them are settled, with the exception of one, which is our transportation unit, the ATU. So we are in the process of projecting those salaries based on those agreements. And also our staffing will be informed by our enrollment and programming needs. I'll talk a little bit about enrollment later. Health insurance increases. We are projecting a 5.5% increase to health insurance. Keep in mind, our health insurance costs annually are well over $4 million, probably closer to 4.5. So 5.5% of that is significant that we will have to absorb. It's approximately $250,000. Then we also, as a New York State employer, we're obligated to pay employer pension rates. So we have New York State Teachers Retirement System. We have the Employee Retirement System. The rates for TRS are projected between 9.5% and 10%. Those numbers will be finalized in the coming months. So we will be projecting at the higher rate. That's a slight decrease from last year. But again, though it's a decrease from last year, our salaries are increased. So net, it will not afford too much of it will be a slight increase. ERS, Employees Retirement System, is 13.1%. That is up from 11.6%. Remember, there's an allowance within the tax levy calculation that if these rates exceed 2%, that we can have an exclusion. So neither of them will impact. They're small enough where they won't impact the tax levy. Then we have the FICA wages. So we're also obligated to pay 7.65% on all wages. The threshold last year was 147. It's increased to 160,000. So that'll increase those costs as well. So between TRS, ERS, and FICA, that's approximately $6+ million. So those changes are significant.
When you say $6 million, so with the increase and the slight decrease, all of that, I would assume that this year it's less than 6 million.
No, what, I'm sorry.
Oh, or you're saying it's that we are this year paying approximately 6 million for TRS, ERS, and FICA, and we will expect, because of the slight decrease in TRS, the increase in ERS, and the increase in FICA, to be paying at least 6 million, maybe a little more, for those three items.
Absolutely more, yes, because the TRS salaries, our teacher salaries represent almost $20 million of our budget. So that $20 million is they're getting their annual increase on top of that. So the differential between the 10% and this year's rate is going to be insignificant. There's not going to be any revenue generated on that for sure.
Mhm.
Special education placements. So we are projecting that they will minimally remain stable. I'm working with our PPS director, Rachel DePaul, who has a really great handle on our students and their placements. And we will be projecting those students and those numbers within the next few months. But we're hoping that we can at least maintain our existing costs, with maintenance costs going up, tuition rates going up, et cetera. We are projecting a 2% increase on our BOCES administrative capital and service costs. We have a slight decrease in our career and tech costs this year for BOCES. I got a preliminary under the table quote from BOCES, and but the other costs will be going up, so we're projecting about an average of 2%. Our utility costs, as of today, we are projecting 20 to 25% increases on that. Again, we had an EPC project, so that will bring back some additional revenue to the district, in that our energy costs are going down, an energy performance contract. So our energy costs are going down, but we don't have enough time. Our solar energy and so forth has not been in effect long enough to really get any hard data. But we know for a fact that it is having a positive impact on our usage, which will in turn affect our costs. Our debt service projections will incorporate our future facilities project. Again, that will have no impact on the local share because of our declining debt, and also the building aid that's generated. Our technology increases due to the maintenance of our one-to-one device program. And our intent is to maintain all athletic and co-curricular programs. Okay. So next steps. So again, our state aid projections will be coming out hopefully next week. It'll take us a good 3 to 4 weeks to really analyze those. They're based on the November database, so there are errors occasionally, so we will be looking at those. Enrollment projections currently indicate approximately 20 new students district-wide, with no significant staffing or changes that we've identified just yet. There's some realignment of staffing. The growth that was expected with the new residential housing within Croton is not expected to impact our enrollment this current year. We are in the process of preparing our salary projections. Again, we have information on 5 of our 6 bargaining units. We will be assessing our vehicle transportation plans, replacement plans, and ideally utilizing reserves for those as opposed to borrowing, which we've done in the past, due to the capital transportation reserve that was approved by the voters last year. Part of the process involves, so if you go down to the 4th from the bottom, assessing our current year performance, part of the process involves validating the accuracy of our projections from last year. So that is an analysis of our existing data, our existing costs, re-projecting that out, and also doing our fund balance projections. So we will be involved in that for the next 3 to 4 months, and preparing our fund balance projections. So this is one of those upcoming dates. February 2nd, we have a budget update. February 16th will be our building level instructional budgets presented by our principals. March 2nd, we will review technology, pupil personnel services, and our athletic budgets. March 23rd will be a budget work session where we'll review comprehensive overview of our budget. April 13th will be the superintendent's budget adoption for the 23-24 budget, followed by our public budget hearing on May 4th, and then our annual vote and trustee elections on May 16th. Again, these are just our public budget presentations. Of course, we are meeting with our building leaders, our PTAs, our collective bargaining presidents, etc. Senior citizens groups, Rotary Club, etc. Questions?
Does anyone have any questions for Denise?
Which one of you is gonna start?
Neil?
I probably have several, but I'll just try one.
Okay.
I believe I heard you say you expect the transportation needs for next year to be paid for through reserves. We
That's,
said-
of course, a board decision.
Right, but we set, that's what you're gonna probably suggest. We set up a reserve, the voters approved last May.
Mhm.
Right, setting up the reserve, which is, I presume, going to be funded, has been funded to a certain extent, and will be funded more come June 2023.
That reserve is fully funded.
That was my question. It's fully funded with how much?
2 million.
2 million. Okay, so to the extent that we are talking about any concerns about purchase of electric vehicles, applying for any grant money that may be available, as we're going to be talking about that is where you expect to be financing those vehicles, electric or other. Okay.
And we will need voter
I was
approval.
gonna say, has
for
it-
that as well.
Sure, understood. I know we need voter approval to spend the money out of that reserve, as we always do, but that's as opposed to bonding.
As opposed to
Bad
financing.
financing, banning and bonding, and I guess that will also go into our discussion, a more long-range perspective about financing as we move into the facilities construction project, and the cost of architects and the cost of preparation and the cost of construction. So I'm just trying to follow those couple of different balls that are bouncing in the air simultaneously that we have to keep in mind now and in future years.
Right, because as you know, all of those require a lot of lead time for public posting, board approval, and there are timelines as far as how far in advance they need to be done. So yes, we have a pretty rigorous calendar.
I was trying to find last, I didn't have a chance to look at it beforehand. The sales tax,
Yes,
they were taught, I heard about how inflation is causing the expectation of additional sales tax revenue from New York State. I know it's varying by county to county. This is an estimated number that you have here currently, right?
yes.
How much was it compared to last year?
So last
Yeah.
year, we projected. Last year, we projected 400,000.
Okay,
We exceeded that. This year, we projected 600,000.
And we're hoping to exceed that as well.
Exceeding that.
Yeah.
So next year I'm projecting approximately 750,000.
Okay,
I think that's a safe.
so really early, I know, but do you have a sense in aggregate what the change in revenue is going to be for next year compared to the increase in expenditure?
Well, the state aid numbers are so, I mean, I have projections. What, I'm not comfortable with those
No,
projections
it's
until.
too early, I
And
understand.
also the levy is also contingent on those state aid numbers as well. So, but I think that we can, Sarah shared an article this week and there's been a lot of publicity on. I think we can expect that the foundation aid will come through. And based on the preliminary tax numbers and wealth ratios, I would think that that's going to increase significantly too. But again, we have the falling off of the federal funds. So I do think revenue wise, we're going to have a solid year. But again, we're facing on the expenditure side,
Pressure.
inflation, high inflation.
So following through on that. Oh,
Josh.
Josh.
Speaking of inflation, some of our expenses are more impacted by inflation than others.
Right.
Obviously. There are things that are set that we understand that, we're told what we need to do, and that's determined by our contract with our bargaining units and, the PRS and ERS rates, et cetera. What percentage of our expense budget would you say, I mean, in very rough terms, is really impacted directly by the inflation rate? I mean, what percentage of our budget is stuff that we buy or services that we buy that are actually
So are
subject to
you
that
saying-
inflation rate, as opposed to the things that we already know about, like our salaries, which
Right.
are driven by contract?
I would say about 30%. But that's,
I understand that it's a rough number.
yeah, it's a rough number. I would say about 30%.
Mhm.
So certainly our contracts, our facilities, maintenance, all of that is impacted greatly by
Anything that we contract out for on the short term.
annually. So
Okay.
bids are developed annually and then, so if we have, for example, if we have a bid that is put out that has a 5-year renewal, increases are usually based on CPI.
Understood.
So those would be increased. Health insurance is certainly impacted by it. Our supplies and materials budgets are, small in comparison to our benefits and salaries.
Right.
But I'd say between 25 and 30% if you pull out all of those other components.
Because that somewhat mitigates the impact of that 8%, 8.06%
Mhm.
number. That does not really apply to our entire budget.
Correct.
There's other inflationary numbers there, but they're not 8%. They're more than 2 to 4% range, right?
Right.
Neil.
Yeah,
and me.
Okay.
Then
No.
me.
Honest
Me
deferring
first?
to
You
Neil.
first.
Oh, thank you. Having participated in the student faculty congress meetings and privy to the policy or the resolution before the policy committee regarding funding for school lunches. So I was wondering if you could offer some insight into where that falls into the budget. And if Governor Hochul's, I think, soft promise right now to fund that, given the federal aid that we've lost during COVID for that, but also just across many different groups and organizations, the support for that funding.
So,
For the lunch fund,
For the lunch
Yeah.
funding, yeah, for the school.
I missed when she said that they would fund that.
My understanding is that she's been supported at the teachers unions and supported it, like there's collective bargaining units that are
No lobbying for that?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I knew a lot of lobbying was happening. I wasn't aware that the governor had made any sort of statement regarding it.
I've
So
heard
that's
people
exciting.
represent that, but maybe I'm wrong. You heard, Molly, at the meeting, wasn't that? Never mind. In any event, if you have any insight into that area of the budget and any potential impact. Well, it absolutely would have an impact, right now. So our lunch program is very complicated because of the fact that we just implemented it a few years ago and then COVID hit. And then we were locked into a contract that was challenging, to say the least. So the long and short of it is that if it becomes universal free meals, the loss to the district will be greater than if we had a normal lunch program, because without the free and reduced meals, we have students who pay for meals. Then we also have a reimbursement rate from the state. The reimbursement rates from the state vary significantly. So they changed the status of our program. They have over the past 2 years. I think it was more COVID related. And I don't expect that we're going to be jumping through those hoops. I think it was a measure that they implemented in order to funnel more funds to school districts. But our lunch program right now is not self-sustaining. So that would also increase the amount that we would have to fund through the general fund. We have an allocation of, I believe I allocated a $30,000 transfer to the school lunch fund. If we go to universal free meals, then I will most likely have to increase that, probably double it. Okay, thank you. Okay, that's all. Well, we could double it, or what we could do is we could do an interfund transfer later in the year once we saw where we were as far as fund balance and so forth, which is what we've done in the past. And that's a requirement, right, to have that in the fund balance? Requirement? Well, a lunch fund is supposed to be a self-supporting. Yeah, we're not supposed to run deficits in the lunch fund, but many districts are. Many districts are either in the red or high in the black. There's nobody's neutral because of so many factors impacting it.
And I'm sorry if I could give you back a quick question on that. It would be, I guess, largely determined on what that rate was, if there was any sort of universal funding reimbursement rate would determine what that gap.
That would be one component, and the other component is that we have to go out to bid for our food service management company this year. So depending upon what that rate is, so that rate has the potential to increase as well. So if that goes up, then that reimbursement rate is going to have to go up considerably higher in order to offset it. So a lot of variables.
Yeah. So I guess, and we have this on the agenda for later, that if the state says, okay, we will fund, I'm just trying to get the concept here. State says free lunch for everybody, and we will provide some support for districts. And we are going out to our vendor to say, all right, vendor, come 23-24, what will you charge us? And we bid that. And they come in with a higher number because they're dealing with inflation and they're dealing with wanting to make money on, out of providing that service. Unless the state really funds free lunch very expansively, that gap increases, we have to come up with that money somewhere. We can't charge, so we're going to have to make some kind of an interfund transfer, notwithstanding the rule that lunch is supposed to be self-sustaining. That's kind of the
Exactly.
conundrum?
Yeah.
Okay, which of course does not, we know that there are certain advantages and goals that free lunch provides, we'll talk about that later, but it has a fiscal impact on
It
it.
does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity on the review and update enrollment projections, what are the sources of data or analysis that you do for that?
So we have a demographic report that was created in 2021 that took an historical perspective, it looks at birth rates throughout the county and region, and then incorporated the potential building increases, the residential housing within the community, and developed a demographic projection. So that is what we utilize. And historically, we know we lose a few kids in high school, we gain a few kids in second grade. I mean, we have some patterns that have developed that we use to make those projections.
Has it been a steady increase throughout? I mean, just historically in the most recent history?
Increase in
Yeah.
enrollment? No,
That's like, what is the trend?
no, more downward. More downward than upward. And I will, in our next budget presentation or in an update, I'll give you a historical look at that and also projections moving forward.
Thank you.
So that raises to my mind two questions in a summary in just enrollment. You said the projection looks like rough estimate, an additional 20 students. I know that we had an issue a year ago where we talked about a very full kindergarten,
Mhm.
right? We have 6 sections and we're probably even up or maybe even slightly above our guideline for a number of students per kindergarten class. Is the projection, that's question one, is that projection of the 20 based on expecting more kindergarten students and then having to readjust? So, or where's the 20?
Not necessarily. We have a very small high school, our 12th grade class is very small, so that's dropping off. We have some higher numbers in the middle school that are going into the high school. So the middle school is dropping slightly, high school increasing, CET increasing as well.
Okay.
We do not expect a kindergarten class of the same size that we did last year. So last year was a very big year for a kindergarten class. We do not expect an increase of that size, possibly 5 to 10 less than we had originally projected.
And as far, I guess, connected with that, you said you look at the 2021 demographic study and what that entails. I think most of us are familiar with that, but does that get those projections and assumptions, do they get modified based on what we've seen
Yes.
happening in the last year or 2 years and expect to happen in the next year?
Yeah.
2 years. Okay.
So that's exactly what we were doing today as a team, taking a look at that, because when that report was generated, our 22 numbers were projections. Now we have actual projections. So we've modified those numbers to reflect, current projections, and then we projected out from there with some of the same modeling as the demographic report utilized.
And my last question, which really is just an observation, and you can tell me kind of as we look at this, what I sense is, given the fact that inflation, even if inflation only directly relates to 20 or 30% of the budget, 25 to 30%, and there are going to be increases, as you said, otherwise in terms of salaries of teaching staff and other staff increasing through, steps and lanes and promotions and whatever else,
Leave replacement.
leave replacements, all of those things. the sense that I got was that with a more or less 2% tax levy cap, the way next year's budget will look, at least conceptually, is a somewhat smaller percentage or proportion from property taxes, because we have increased revenue that you've described in those various buckets. But that increased revenue, it seems from what I'm hearing, is not going to be such that the actual tax levy can be much below, if at all below, the 2% cap, because we've got all those other expenses coming from inflation. In other words, less coming from the property taxpayers in terms of proportion.
Proportion.
Right, but not really, we can't say, oh, we're getting all this money from the state, so we can now say, oh, let's have a much lower tax levy because we're fine without it. And I'm just, if that's generally how we look at it before we get into the specifics, that's kind of what I'm seeing. Am I off
Can I
base?
take the fifth on that for a week or two? There's a lot.
The fifth means that you think that you might say something that we can to incriminate you.
No,
Okay,
I think that you mentioned a lot of things,
I know.
and I
And
think that
it-
we need to
Okay.
get more data first.
Okay,
We need those January 19th numbers, I think.
sure,
Yeah.
For a lot of this.
Sure,
That's
but-
certainly gonna
but that's
drive a
fine.
lot.
I just, that's kind of what's been ruminating in my mind as I've listened, and we'll see how it, plays out.
So remember, the tax levy formula is a prescribed formula. There's not a lot of nuance or deviation to it. So that formula is that formula. We will, generate the numbers based on that. If the state aid numbers come in very high, I foresee the need to maybe reduce the appropriated fund balance that the district contributes every year to cover the budget gap. So that's a possibility as well.
Question for Steve. How are you asking your building level leaders to approach this year's budget? In relation comparison to the prior years?
No difference. We start with what's the vision for the next year and beyond that for the instructional program? How does that align with the broader vision that we've laid out through the guiding questions? And then we go through a process of thinking through and winnowing over the course of time. Once, as Denise said, the financial figures become more concrete, and we go through the process of winnowing what we'd love to have in an ideal scenario down to what it is that we can include in the budget and be financially responsible for the taxpayers. So no change from prior years.
Aside from the guiding questions.
Sure, there's always a vision, right? There's always a conversation around vision. In this context, we're centering it around the guiding questions and the strategic plan, but in every year, it's a conversation around what does this budget, what can this budget do to support your vision as building leader for the next year of the experience for kids.
Any other questions for Denise, Steve? All right. Well, thank you very much. We look forward to talking much more about the budget over the coming months.
That's right. And again, if you would like, I forgot to change code one on here. We have all of our social media, which we'll be posting on. We also have budgetquestions.org if you'd like to, at chufsty.org if you'd like to send a request and follow us on social media.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, so now we will move into new business. First up is the alternate video conferencing participation. That comes out of the open meetings law section 103A that I know we had referred to the policy committee for discussion and recommendation to the board.
So I'll turn it over to Neil. Start us off on this.
Sure. I guess very simply, the policy committee met on December 16th. I think, and we spoke about whether or not the policy committee wanted to recommend to the board adoption of a resolution that would enable board members to participate in board meetings by remote means without having to designate their location. And as we look through this, and I know we discussed this before in the board, at the board, the requirements that are established for having such participation are, to our mind, somewhat onerous. And so we talked about them and felt before we go on to develop a resolution and also to amend, revise policies and add new policies, we would just get a sense of the board as to whether the board as a whole felt that this was something worth pursuing, or whether we want to maintain only the current policy, which is established by law, that if you are going to attend remotely, we will notify the community where that location will be, and the community conceivably can go to that location and participate in the meeting. The concern is that, first off, and I circulate everybody and it's attached as public content. If you see on page 2, this is not useful or usable for a board member who is going to be unable to be physically present in a board meeting, but it's only if there is an extraordinary circumstance, which is defined as things like health issues. Basically, things like that, things that are not just, I'm going to be out of town on business, or I'm going to be out of town on vacation, and therefore I would like to participate without letting anyone know where I'll be. You know, part of the concern that was raised at NISBA when this question came up, and NISBA adopted a resolution to try to get a law on this subject, was if notice is there that, you know, I'm not going to be here, I'm going to be in Florida, you're kind of sending a signal to people that your house is vacant. We may be sending that signal, and there's questions of safety. Questions of safety, even if you're elsewhere, in terms of board members' physical safety, which was a concern raised. But that's not what the law says. So the law is really much more restrictive as to when it can be used. The law also states that there are certain that members of the public body who are not, if you're going to have that kind of participation under this provision, members of the public you have to make sure that everybody is heard, and members of the public have to be given the same access to the meeting remotely as that remotely participating individual board member, which would mean, in essence, what we would be doing if we were to, as we would be saying, that we would need to manage our meetings very differently, because we would have to allow members to members of the public to participate remotely, as in hearing of the public. And, you know, we did that to some extent when we were entirely remote, correct, during pandemic time under the emergency orders. But that's a rather difficult logistical operation. And we, it's a question really for the board whether we want to undertake that. Also, there are requirements as to what must be maintained in terms of the recording of the meeting. We do, as a matter of practice, although it's not required by law, we do videotape our meetings. We do place on videotape the meetings on social media or accessible through the website of the district so that people can see our meeting later. But this would establish that requirement, which of course, if anything happened, if there's any glitch, we all of a sudden have a whole different issue about that meeting and that member's participation. The bottom line of it is that and the last thing is that the person who is participating remotely, you should know, is not counted towards the quorum. Which means that you must have a quorum present. And that can raise an issue of course, if we do have some kind of an emergency or special meeting and not everyone of us can be there. And so the only person who, that would make a quorum would be participating through the process, and we couldn't have a quorum anyway. So those are some of the downsides of doing this, but it's really before we go forward, the committee wanted to get a sense of the board, whether or not we felt there was a desire for the board to approach this and move forward, or whether we want to just kind of follow it.
So I guess before we open it up, and I'm happy to tell you my thoughts on this, and we open it up to everybody else's thoughts. Did the committee itself, did you guys as a committee come to a consensus on what your recommendation would be, whether or not to move forward with it?
We did not.
You did.
I mean, I think between Josh, and I, we talked about it. I know my feelings on it, which I can express, but we said, you know what, rather than saying, well, 2-to-1, yes, or 2-to-1, no, or 3-0, we'll want to find out what other people feel, and then we'll,
Sounds good. So did anyone have thoughts on this that they wanted to bring forth? I'm happy to share mine, but I'll let anyone else go first.
I mean, on the one hand, it sounds like it's making it easier for members to join remotely. At the same time, it's saying under extraordinary circumstances, right? So I don't know if, to get back to the committee, I don't know if it's worth changing if the circumstances in which we can join remotely, right, aren't well defined yet. Example, working late, right? Is that a reason enough to say, you know what, I'll stay in the office and join remotely? Understanding that it won't be part of the quorum at that point, right? Won't be counted toward the quorum.
But the issue there is, that would not fit within the quote, extraordinary circumstances.
Exactly.
Right,
So what? Yeah, that's my.
Josh?
My take on this is that let us suppose hypothetically that there were a resurgence of the COVID pandemic. If that were the case, I think that's really the sort of case this law is meant to support.
Not really, because you have to have a quorum in a physical location.
And
So this isn't
Well, and I guess-
should this happen again, these are the ways that you would go remote and everyone would be able to participate remotely.
But I'm thinking more about when you have a large number, a number of board members. Not sufficient to impact quorum, but a number of one or more board members who are ill and therefore it would be unwise for them to be physically at the board meetings, preserve their ability to participate. And I kind of have a sense that my reading of this seems to be, it's like, unusual, exigent circumstance, seems, sounds a lot like a board member's in quarantine. to me.
And that may have been the
And I
thought
have a
behind it. I
sense
just,
that
I think that
And this, I think this gives us some of that, but I'm not sure whether that is enough to spend the effort on it. On the other hand, my worry is that in the future, there might not be a state of emergency set that gives us the buy that we had, the out that we had during the height of the pandemic. That the legislature or the governor or whoever would be making such an order would take a look at these. Well, you could just have this policy, right? And that would solve your problem.
Actually, I don't know what this is, but bullet 2, for purposes of this procedure, the term extraordinary circumstances includes civility, illness, caregiving responsibilities, or any other significant or unexpected factor or event which precludes the member's physical attendance at such meeting.
which doesn't define what's significant or unexpected.
The caregiving responsibilities.
yeah, so sickness,
Very-
caregiving, those are clear, but I'm traveling on business doesn't necessarily follow. this.
Yeah,
That's why it's like,
That's unexpected.
But it says, doesn't it say that it directs the board to define extraordinary circumstances, right? So we could add a more clear definition
Well,
to, or any other significant. I thought I saw that somewhere.
I mean, looking at the statute, it says, one could raise the claim that, the significant, I think it's significant. The board's refusal to let me participate is improper because it is under the law and you just, your rules are too narrow. So the lack of definition and the fact that this is just, kind of a guidance document from the Committee on Open Government that has no force of law really makes it difficult to know what extraordinary circumstances are. Now, Josh points out that, you could have a situation where there's a flu epidemic and a bunch of people are unable to attend, less than quorum. And 4 people will be in this room and 3 people will be at home sniffling and they can't come. I know, we have. We also, I guess we can think about whether or not it's, that's likely to happen in such a situation that it's not, quote, a state of emergency, so to speak. Because if it's a state of emergency, that's gonna come.
mhm,
And I think that's gonna come probably more quickly because there are other deliberative legislative bodies that meet more frequently and therefore may have a greater need for this accommodation. But be that as it may, maybe your feeling is you just want to have it in the back pocket in case we ever use it, but as a general practice, we're not going to use it.
Yeah. I have to be honest, I think this entire thing seems. Frankly, that what the legislature did in this is kind of half-baked.
Okay, well,
But that doesn't mean that. It doesn't go. My sense of it is it kind of feels like they didn't really think it through far enough before enacting it, think through all the, what the actual implications were. And the fact is, as you say, if it doesn't resolve the issue of quorum, it's not really useful to us.
Right.
When we really need to use it in anger. Okay, that's really what the case is like. When would this be really important? It's important when there's urgent business before the board. And it's not possible for a quorum to be physically present. It's not possible to get a quorum under the normal circumstances.
and
If it doesn't address the quorum issue, then it's it's kind of it's not really solving it.
It doesn't mention voting, right? Voting, you can vote.
You can vote, yes,
can
As
vote.
long as there's a vote.
Right,
as long as there's a quorum
Right.
in the room.
But that's an important factor.
right. However, if you give notice of where you are located, and that's in the meeting notes.
Right.
Right? And
4 days before.
yeah, whatever is 4 days before, et cetera, then you would be permitted to vote and conceivably would not even need to have a quorum present because the participation of the person participating remotely is pursuant to
Because they're
section
just-
103.
Because they're not participating remotely, they're participating in an alternate public location. And that's the difference,
Yeah,
so.
That's why you could do it you could do it from the lobby bar of the hotel,
Correct.
but not
But not
from your
your hotel
hotel room.
Correct.
Can I ask a question on a very practical technological thing? So if there is that last minute, someone needs to be remote and in that's in the case, that's where we also need to have the public be able to access in the same way as well, right? So I say, I got sick all of a sudden, I would need to participate remotely. Would that require us to have?
Meaning if we enacted this.
If we enacted this, correct.
You were participating remotely, then
Correct.
that would trigger the, yes, that public participation
Right.
video.
So that's a very logistical, that's kind of a barrier. I mean, it's hard to do that last minute.
right, public, right, because you participating in extraordinary circumstance means that, because we don't know when that's gonna happen,
Right.
we in essence would have to have everything set
In case it
in
does
case it
happen.
happens, or everything set just to allow that participation in that manner, because we never know. And so
And
therefore,
outside
we
of,
have to-
I mean, because it's relatively easy to go on Zoom, but I guess it's just notice, or it's not easy. Sorry, I'm assuming that was an assumption. It's not easy to go on Zoom. Okay.
No, but the issue would be notice would have to be provided to the public. That the public would be permitted to participate at the remote location if you're going under the original section 103.
Right now. I'm
So,
talking about-
which is why you can be at the lobby bar, if the public at the, at that hotel, the public can go to that hotel, sit there in the lobby with you and participate in the meeting, observe the meeting where you board member are. And yet, but you have notice to the public that they can go there. So, just sort of inviting them to join you on vacation.
So, did you?
I just wanted to kind of come at it from the perspective that the urgency that I think that is embodied in this particular draft, kind of reeks of this gotcha type action that happens like on boards, and we don't operate that way. We don't operate from like a place of urgency. The public has multiple means by which they can contact the board. We have a wonderful, relationship with our administration, and we're constantly guiding, people in our community to reach out to our administration. So this type of urgency where like you have to have a pop-up remote where the public can access it, like I have to be able to call in from my car, otherwise my voice won't be heard. I just don't think that is reflective of our district. So I don't see a need for this. I think that if there were emergency, like knock on wood, we're not back in pandemic days. The state has risen to the occasion and always made amends and made accessibility not an issue. And I think at that point, as a board, we would probably collectively review this. But given the logistics, I don't see that this is like a good investment of our time or our resources. And I also just believe in the nature of like in-person meetings. So it's not something that I'm in favor of, but I'm open to hear what my colleagues think about that otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the bottom line, I agree with you. I think that the logistics involved with taking advantage of this carve out, which is also only temporary. I think it's only through 2024 when they evaluate to see how well it works. I think they're too onerous for the potential usefulness of it, which is very low, I think, for us, that it doesn't seem worth us going through the work of putting this through.
I think we would just continue to operate as we have and as open meetings law laid out prior to this.
And I would also have safety concerns for like my colleagues on the board to be noticing their whereabouts in other places. Like we have, you know, some safety here in this building, in this room, meeting here. I would have concerns.
Well, but the issue on that is that if we go under the pre-existing law, the notice,
We do need to notice.
that's when you need to notice the location. Obviously, some of us have used that not frequently, but,
Like, I wonder if that would cause Altair as muster for us to be.
But
Adopting the policy.
with this resolution,
We would not.
we would
notice.
not have to notice the location.
Correct.
Right.
So it addresses one part, but then it's.
It addresses
so safety, but it's not well defined in every other aspect of it, that I think it may be premature.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think that if, and especially given that it sunsets in 24.
Mhm.
I kind of want to wait.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I would add that if the board should decide at some future point to change its mind, all that's required is the adoption of a resolution.
Yeah.
Part of the reason the policy committee brought this, wanted to bring this forward, is that NISBA has suggested that certain policies be revised to incorporate these provisions.
Mhm.
And we didn't want to start going through the work of doing those revisions if in fact it's not of an interest now, because you don't need the policy change.
Right.
So if we are fine to say, okay, we keep it on the shelf, if we need it, we'll pull it off the shelf, look at it, pass a resolution if necessary, and go forward.
Sounds like a good approach.
Okay, so did you want, thumbs up, thumbs down?
Well,
Because it seems like we've come to a consensus, but
so the consensus is leave it alone for now, keep it on the shelf.
Nah, that's the consensus. Nah.
Okay.
sounds good.
Yep.
And that will be you.
Yep, one less thing I'll have to do with.
All right, so now we will move on to item 3.2, which is the Healthy School Meals for All resolution that the advocacy committee worked on. So recommended action that the Board of Education approves the resolution for Healthy School Meals for All as presented.
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, who seconded that? Theo? And on the question, did anyone have any comments, thoughts, questions, concerns regarding this resolution that Neil and I can answer for you as representatives of the advocacy committee?
All I have to say is I heartily agree with the content of the resolution.
I will just add that what we included in the resolution that goes a little bit beyond the sample is that we would like our federal legislators who also focus on this issue on a federal level. The primary focus from NISBA, who recommended this, was push the state. But we would like, the federal government also to deal with this, because part of the issue why it comes up is that the Child Nutrition Act
It's a federal.
is a federal program which has not been extended to provide this school lunch support.
But also the reality is this is not an issue in New York alone.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Oppose, abstain? Motion carries. Right, we'll now move into 3.3, which is the KG&D contract. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the agreement between Croton Harmon Union Free School District and KG&D Architects as presented.
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, was that Theo or?
That was Omar.
Oh, thank you.
On the question? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Oppose, abstain? Motion carries. 3.4, recommended action that the Board of Education approves the agreement between the Croton Harmon Union Free School District and Triton Construction Management as presented.
So move.
Second.
On the question,
One second.
Was there a separate carve out here for the field? I think I saw it under KD&G.
Yeah, no, this was all encompassing
Okay.
lump sum.
So, the item that I was actually taking a quick look at that occurred to me is whether we have anything where it addresses unexpected delay.
Hmm,
Since we had been bitten by that in the past. And it looks like a pretty standard AIA contract.
Yeah, there, other than the fee schedule, should we exceed the recommended timeline? No.
No, is that there?
But this is construction manager. This is not the
Contract.
not a GC.
Correct.
yeah, I think, given the things that have happened in the past with our actual construction contractors and our subs, we're gonna be much more, want to be much more persnickety, is that the right word? On
Yeah.
making sure that we are protected in you know,
In
whoever,
this fact.
in the
yes.
bid specs and in the ultimate contract. Or whoever we have to choose.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, abstain, motion carried. We'll now move into 3.5, the overnight trip for varsity baseball to Vero Beach. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the JV varsity baseball team's overnight trip to the Jackie Robinson Sports Complex located in Vero Beach, Florida, as presented.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor? Aye. Oppose, abstain, motion carries. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the Croton Harmon High School Cultural Experience Club's overnight trip to Spain as presented.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor? Aye. Oppose, abstain? Josh abstains. Motion carries. All right, we will now move into ongoing business. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the bond resolution as presented.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay,
Neil moves.
on the question? All in favor? Aye. Oppose, abstain, motion carries. All right, we will now move into agenda item 5. Recommended action that the Board of Education accepts the administrative resignation of Paul Gibbons, Director of Facilities, for the purpose of retirement effective end of day, June 29th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
While we are very sad to see Paul leave us, we're happy and wish him all the best in his retirement. So, all in favor? Aye. Oppose, abstain, motion carries. We'll now move into donations. Recommended action that the Board of Education gratefully accepts a donation in the amount of $200 from Eric Kohler and New York Life as a contribution to the Carrie E. Tompkins Elementary School General Fund.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor? Aye. Oppose, abstain, motion carries. And recommended action that the Board of Education gratefully accepts a donation of of softball pitching machine from Silvio DeSisto as a contribution to the Croton Harmon Athletic Department.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor? Aye. Oppose, abstain, Motion carries. And 3, recommended action that the Board of Education gratefully accepts a donation in the amount of $500 as a contribution to the Cohen Theater Participation Award at the Croton Harmon High School.
Sorry, who was that?
That was Theo that moved it, and Josh seconded.
Thank you.
On the question?
Yes.
Yes.
Because I had a question, which is, maybe I'll have it answered once I've looked at this document. This is, I think, a more recent edition. I was gonna ask, what is this award that, because I believe it's a new award?
Correct.
Yes, and what is it directed toward?
There's an attachment in the executive that states all that.
Okay, well, I think, given the fact that we're approving it, I don't see any reason why, now that I see it, we should say it's an award that would be established by two longstanding community members, or to go to a student who has made a significant contribution to the theater production during their time at the high school. And not only for actors, but it could be someone who is in stage management, costuming, design, technology, etc. And I'm assuming that this would be an award that would be given at the end of the year, at the time we do other awards, even it's sort of graduating senior, so it would be in June.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, abstain? Motion carries. Once again, we'd like to thank all of our donors for their consideration and thinking of our students. And we know how much our students benefit from the support that they receive from our community. So thank you. We'll now move into the consent agenda. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the consent agenda items as presented.
So moved.
And I get a second.
Second.
Josh, that was you?
Yeah.
Josh,
Reluctant.
yeah, reluctantly.
Yeah.
Okay, on the question?
It goes without saying that our hesitation here.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we all know what our hesitation here is for.
We oppose.
Maybe some.
Yeah, Tracy, what would happen?
Something. I'll put it in the next.
Just keep coming at us.
That's not enough notice. They'll just have to accept.
Oh, yes. Well, all in favor?
Aye.
Whoever
Aye.
Congratulations.
opposed, abstained, motion carries. For our community that has not gone through the details of the consent agenda, on there is the resignation of our district clerk, Tracy Borges, for the purpose of retirement. And we are all very reluctant to see her go, but excited and happy for her retirement.
I'm not happy or excited.
Okay, some of us are happy and excited while also being sad. All right, now we will move into the closing of the meeting. And so that brings us to our second hearing of the public. We ask that anyone who wants to address the board, do so at the podium there. You can just state your name and you can put your address or email address on the form provided, I believe, on the podium. And please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
I'm Zed Riley, I'm from Truesdale Drive. I hope that the Croton Harmon School Board is paying close attention to the events in the school boards of Northern Virginia. The two school boards in question, Fairfax County with a population of 1.25 million, similar to Westchester County, one school district, and the school district in Loudoun County next to it, which is about 350,000 population, maybe 400. The first involves handling transgender and violent kids, which they failed to do. which resulted in the firing of that superintendent and criminal charges against the superintendent. In Fairfax County, it had to do with discrimination against Asian parents and students and the awarding of merit scholarships and acknowledgement, not the awarding, but the acknowledgement in front of student bodies in at least 3 high schools. And the attempt to dismantle Jefferson High School, one of the finest high schools in the United States, because there were too many people of Indian and the Oriental extraction attending the schools. In addition to that, you're a member of the New York State School Board Association, one of the few left. I think there are 20 state school board associations still affiliated with the National School Board Association. The reason is because the National School Board Association, in coordination with the White House, set the DOJ and the FBI when parents protesting throughout the United States. And the justification for that was one small act of violence in one school district out of, God knows how many school districts. It's more than, there's 10,000 in the United States. So 20 school districts, 20 state school district associations have withdrawn from that organization because it is irretrievably corrupt. Item 2, politics in the school. Oh, safety. You may not or may be aware of now, we have obviously a fentanyl epidemic in the United States. It's claiming more lives than any drug epidemic in the history of the United States. Disproportionately affects young people. We have a cannabis dispensary going in Croton somewhere. The possibility of accidents with candy and anything related to cannabis goes up, plus the illegal cannabis distribution. Last 2 items are CVS, if they go through it. 1, there's going to be protests. 2, it's going to affect your student body. They will distribute abortifacient drugs, RU-46, which is a combination of 2 very dangerous drugs, which I'll leave information for you. You better alert your school nurses to that because it's going to be a bloody affair. And lastly, I hope someone in the school board for physical security, in light of all the violence in schools and elsewhere in the United States, stays on the physical security case and has a great relationship with the police department defending their schools against violence. Most of which these cases are perpetrated by current or former students. Thank you.
So I just started on my way.
Good evening, everyone. Cyril Azupal, 47 Alcott. I go by Tom. I did send out a message on the website as well as an email to the board giving more detail on this. So I am a disabled veteran and I'm a current reservist. And I was in the past 20% VA disabled, service connected. I recently this year that got bumped to 100%. The reason why I'm bringing that up is because this is in relation to the school property tax. I qualify for 2 property tax exemptions, the basic war and combat vet as well as disabled vet. And the way the law is written, you have to choose between 2 numbers. Nanette, who's the acting town assessor, helped me figure out all the figures. But basically with the town, the assessed value is approximately, the assessed values are 90,000 and 180,000 for those respective exemptions. And the school district is 20,000 and 40,000. So, and in that scenario, and if you look at my email, you'll see the visual for yourself. That's a difference. So the way the law is written, if I would have either qualified for 6,600, but now because the lower number is the school board side, I only get 918. Now that's a big difference. And on top of that, with the town, I'm getting 4,131, and that's over a $3,000 difference between the town and the school. Now, where I have another issue is the way the law is written. I automatically do not get the 100%. It takes 50% of whatever that percentage is. So I'm already screwed on that. Whereas like if I move to New Jersey, the whole state of New Jersey, I can move anywhere. And because of my 100% service connected, permanent and total classification from the VA, I would not pay any property tax. So, and then on top of that, that obviously the school district is struggling with diversity, but I was like, a lot of my friends have been pushing me. They're like, just, lobby the school board, see what can happen, because ultimately, I don't want to leave here. I have 3 children, 2 that are at CET, 1 that's in daycare right now. But, these type of decisions will drive future decisions for me, as well as, the network of veterans that I have that are, starting to have kids, and something that we're like focusing on. And I will also know I am going to be getting deployed for the border crisis. So if we had access to that, the video conferencing where the public can actually engage with you, that would benefit us. So that's it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, we will now move into board reports. First up is advocacy. The main content of our last advocacy meeting was the resolution that we voted on earlier this evening. So I don't really have anything more to report out of advocacy, but we will be meeting again next week. And as the governor just gave her state of the state with some materials and reports to go along with that, we'll begin to talk about budget and legislative priorities, things like that. So that I imagine will be much of the content of our next advocacy meeting. Neil, do you have anything else to add? I'm forgetting.
Nope.
Sorry, I'm
Nope.
hopping in quickly.
Nope.
Mary wasn't able to join us tonight.
I have nothing to say.
Well, then, I will then turn it over to the audit committee.
Yeah, audit met on December 15th to review the risk assessment and propose a new area of focus. Typically, the district goes through one area of focus at a time. Given that after review of the risks that were presented, nothing really jumped up as a concern. But because of the frequency or the lack of review and the length of time in which some of these areas were reviewed, we want to increase it to 2 areas of focus. So we're going to be doing HR because of pending retirement in that area, and we're also going to add fund balance to that review. Again, not because of any concern, but just because it's been a long time since it was reviewed.
Yes.
One question for.
Yes.
More in the audit. Under the statute, we are required to do 1 internal audit per year.
Mhm.
And we are charged whatever fee we are for that. Given the absence of anything that is pressing in terms of a concern found during the risk assessment, what is the reason for doing 2 internal audits in the same year rather than doing 1 this year and 1 in the beginning of next year, so that we are not, we don't run into a problem that we did not do an audit next year?
So, I mean, there is a rolling list of focus areas, right? The issue with fund balance is Denise and the team are very capable and they just have it under control. It's just an area that hasn't been looked at in a long time. And we felt that it was worth looking into, not at the expense of human resources. And so it was, you have to pick an area, right?
Mhm.
Operationally, HR makes sense to go through that.
Agreed.
At the same time, when you haven't looked at fund balance for a number of years, it also kind of comes up as an issue that you don't want to continue to say, let's punt on this for another year, because next year procurement's going to be an issue, or we did payroll last year, so that's going to be gonna be one before we circle back on that one. Every year, there's gonna be another pressing issue, so we felt it was worthwhile doing it together. Coming in. And just check the box that we're done.
It's also one of the top 5 audits by the controller's office. So we figured that it was good to take a look at it. We are on a 5-year cycle with the controller's office, so it's likely that we would go through a controller's audit within the next year or so.
Okay, so for that reason, it's important that we get
Right.
things squared away in anticipation. Gotcha.
Is that wonderful? Thank you very much. All right, board developments. We had our retreat prior to the break. Thank you everyone for attending. And we did not meet this last week. We just said we would hold off until our next month's meeting. When we'll look at end of the year stuff and some other, and then we're getting in another retreat before the end of the year, and then
Maybe a survey.
but also beginning discussions on self-evaluation.
Right.
Is that, I'm not forgetting anything else there?
Correct.
All right. Communications.
Communications will be meeting on January 18th, which I believe Tracy's already noticed. At that time, we will be discussing, amongst other things, information regarding the budget and the trustee vote. That's it.
Great. Policy.
Policy met, I said the 16th, but I'm looking at the calendar, it's actually 21st. And we discussed a number of different items, including the work that we had discussed today. If you hold on just 1 second. Let me get out the remainder of that. Want to just see if there's anything else. I'm sorry, I didn't pull up our minutes beforehand. See if there was anything in particular. Let's put up Steve and Hugh. And we also had a preliminary brainstorming discussion on development of a social media policy or policy areas of focus, areas of goals, using Josh's term, anti-goals, and things that we want to make sure our policy does not do, definitions and other considerations. And we are going to follow up with at some point in the near future, considering a first draft of various policies, which will then be distributed or shared with various stakeholders and stakeholder groups, including administrative council. We assume building planning councils, students, student faculty congress, and other groups to get through their sense. And obviously, we're working very closely with our director of innovation and technology to make sure that we are following not only best practices, but following legal requirements and ensuring the safety of our community that is using social media, meaning our school community. We also had discussion on some of the policies that relate to minutes, board meetings, notices. And we didn't make any changes or do anything proposed because we were not sure that what the board was going to say. We will be getting back to those at our next meeting. And lastly, we do expect at our next, in our upcoming meetings, and I'm not sure exactly when, to review policies and policy amendments to policies involving supporting our district's commitment to address equity. That will address questions of recruiting and hiring and what we do in that regard, and materials and other aspects of our equity and diversity efforts that the board has already discussed and adopted. I'll call it a framework for moving forward. I think that's about it. We do not have our next meeting scheduled yet. Part of it, I think, because I mentioned two very big tasks, which are the equity policy that we talked about and the social media. I want to make sure that we're in a situation in which we have those materials to work with. We have other things that are in the hopper or in the parking lot, but I think those are one of our major those are two major focuses for this year.
Thank you. All right, we'll now move into polling of the board. Does anyone have anything for polling? Josh?
I attended the CET Building Planning Council meeting last week. The principal topic of discussion so far at Building Planning Council has been about the facilities plan and fleshing out some of the ideas about what will take place at CET. And there was some very interesting conversation about how changes to the CET landscape, internal and external, will affect teaching and learning inside the building. There was some very interesting brainstorming about ways that, for instance, a revised CET courtyard would be used, and also how the use of a revised CET courtyard could impact learning in the classrooms inside the buildings that surround the courtyard. It was a very interesting conversation about how to balance those needs. And I'm sure that's going to continue going forward as we go further into the design development phase of this project.
Josh, was there concern about learning in those classrooms being affected by the use of the courtyard?
Not so much concern, so much as a desire for planning concerning it. That the use needs to be thoughtful and design thoughtfully and time thoughtfully. And it's just good because our classes that face out of the courtyard.
Sure, yeah.
And if there's loud activities going on in the courtyard, that could potentially have an impact on classes. But at the same time, we don't want the courtyard to become or the committee did not want the courtyard to become a purely silent space either. So it was finding the right balance, and it was and I use this as an example. It's not the sum total of what was discussed there, but it was an item that came up that was interesting and something that I had not thought of before it was brought up. So as an example, and I'm sure there'll be other further discussion on how to best use the new ideas that are coming out. There was also some very interesting discussion about ways that new library facility will be used, for instance. Especially since we've been meeting in the library.
In the red room?
Is that the kindergarten wing or is that the first grade wing? It overlooks that. You know?
Kindergarten.
Kindergarten, thank you.
Well,
Yeah, it overlooks the.
Well, but
yeah, but it's also the first.
Oh, yeah, that's
Second,
true. It's
all
for,
it's-
yeah,
that whole-
yeah. I think about it as the kindergarten space. We come out there, you're looking straight down to it.
one of the nice things about using that space, by the way, is that it is an enclosed space, which means that it is a space that can be used for outdoor activities that is much more secure versus other outdoor spaces that we have for our students to use. Because it is surrounded by the building.
It's semi-enclosed, right? So it has the breezeway.
There's a breezeway, but that's much more easily
Yeah.
patrolled.
Anyone else have anything for polling?
I attended the Student Faculty Congress meeting this Tuesday on the G Day. There was some inquiry as to the board's resolution tonight regarding the free meal, supportive of that resolution. I don't want to step on Molly's report regarding anything that happened there, but I will just say that I continue to be impressed by the passion and the commitment that the members of all members, including our administration and our faculty and our students, participating in our Student Faculty Congress exhibit at a very early time in the morning. I also attended the grade 9-10 parent nights hosted by the guidance department and Mr. Maxim. Dr. Dubak was here also. They included and incorporated in just the information that's all available, as was repeated that evening on the district website under the guidance tab. All of the information regarding the incoming coursework is available there. They did go on to include a question and answer session from the public, parents in attendance, which I thought was really interesting in terms of answering some questions about the BOCES program specifically, but also just the different pathways that are available to students. So I would encourage anyone with a 9th or 10th grade student or contemplating the high school as an option to go on and just peruse that. That's it.
Great, thank you.
I was able to attend 2 days ago, this district-wide safety team meeting, which was my first meeting. And it was extremely informative and very heartening to see the level of expertise and preparation that existed in that space, and all of the stakeholders in that space. The principals were there, our consultants, various folks that do this work. There was a lot of information provided just around ongoing trainings across the buildings that happen, and also trainings on new systems like the voice over internet protocol phones, or I think that's VoIP, whatever that stands for, phones that are now integrated into our whole lockdown system. Access to radios to communicate with Croton Police, a new visitor management system that will improve the kind of monitoring and facilitation of visitor presence in buildings. So a lot really good stuff going on. I felt, and it was extremely informative, as I said, and I think a real consideration of even how to improve further, right, through further communication in that team and in various other spaces. So I think in the future, some priority items will be looking at the district-wide safety plans. I think that happens continuously. Looking at parent reunification planning and really potential events that could happen. Hopefully they don't, but good to be prepared with things like parent reunification, having those plans in place. So again, very, very informative and really heartening that there's a lot already in place, and also a desire to really continue to dig in. I think we're going to meet another couple times before the middle of the year. So I'll keep the board informed about that space.
Okay.
And Neil was there, so I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah. The only thing I wanted to add was, because I participated as board representative last year on EDIRT, and I was impressed with the knowledge and responsiveness and relationship that our district leadership and staff have with the Croton Police Department and the Croton Fire Department, and to make sure that they can be as effective as possible in dealing with emergency situations and other situations. I was also very impressed, this is something that I had raised last year, and that although we're in a small village with a small police department, there are links and protocols in place, without talking about specifics, that provide for the assistance of other first responders, police department, fire department, EMS, et cetera, as necessary. So I think that our community should not have a concern that because we are a small community with a small police department, we are not going to be able to deal with situations that may require a more extensive response than our local police and fire and EMS can provide. And I know that's something that Cal Paris, who is our safety consultant and who works with a number of districts in Westchester and a number of, and I guess probably all of the law enforcement and other first responder organizations, is very, very keen, if you will, on ensuring that those relationships and communications exist to the benefit of our community.
Thank you. So let's have anything before. Yeah.
The only other thing I have, which is I say with regret, is that because of work commitments, I was not able to attend the high school building planning council today, so I don't have a report.
I will piggyback on what Neil said. For PTC Building Planning Council met last week. I was also unable to attend.
All right. I was able to, before the break, I think since our last business meeting, we had an innovation team meeting, which was another fantastic meeting, the think tank protocol that Dr. Blair has implemented for this year's innovation team. And we got an update about it in not this past week, but the one right before the holidays, with some upcoming things, and actually kind of segues into our items needed for the next Board of Education meeting. If no one else has anything for Poland.
I have a quick question of the administration about the steering committee meeting. That was one of when we kind of did the reorganization of committees at the beginning of the year. I had signed up to be on the steering committee, and I just want to make sure I haven't missed an email.
If you have, I've also missed it. You have not missed a meeting. No.
Molly, did you have anything for Poland?
Today, I'm,
You're good. All right. So moving into items needed for the next Board of Education meeting. So our next meeting will be next Thursday. Is a work session meeting. We will have a quick update on budget. But from there, we will actually be having an innovation team style think tank discussion facilitated by Dr. Blair. I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Walker to give us a little bit of info about that.
Yeah, so I would just say that in general, we've been really thrilled with the quality of the discussion at the past few work sessions, and I think are particularly excited about the opportunity and potential of this one. We're going to take a little different approach to this, and that it will be less kind of administrative led and more the seven of you getting a chance to think through a complex and timely challenge within our schools and schools everywhere. And kind of this germinated from the change, as Sarah referenced, in the approach to the innovation team in general, which came from that second guiding question around how do we create opportunities and encourage thoughtful risk-taking within the system in pursuit of inspiration and innovation within our schools. So understanding that it's not just saying to the folks in our system, go innovate. You have to create structures for those sorts of discussions and thinking to happen. And so that then resulted in the shift of the innovation team's focus toward this kind of think tank protocol. And as Sarah referenced, there have been some series of really excellent innovation team meetings where various members of the faculty and administration have brought an idea they're thinking through to this group of parents and staff and students and administrators and said, kind of, let me share my thinking, let me share some background. Let me allow you to think that through, ask questions, and then work in groups to make suggestions so that the person or the persons who have presented that idea leave with some new thoughts, some new things that they can potentially implement and innovate within that kind of sphere. So we want the board to be able to experience some of what that is. And I think Sarah would say that it's an enjoyable kind of framework, pressure-free framework to just get a chance to think through and share ideas. And the idea that we're looking to talk about between Dr. Blair, Dr. Duback, and Ms. Fiorini, and potentially another member of the faculty, is around something that we've been hearing about from Bill Daggett and others for quite some time, but has only just recently become a much more national discussion, which is GPT-3, artificial intelligence, predictive analytics, and what that is doing to the nature of what originality and creativity means, right? And the idea that humans no longer have the market cornered when it comes to creating original content, right? That artificial intelligence can do that. And what does that mean for teaching and learning within our system and systems everywhere? So we view it as an opportunity. We don't view it as something that should be squashed or something that should be kind of kept from students. We believe it's something that can add to the experience in the areas of teaching and learning, but there's a lot to think through there. There's some really deep questions to be asked and ideas to be exchanged. So our plan would be to share some resources with the board in advance tomorrow, and then to go through the protocol that evening, led by Dr. Blair and then by Dr. Duback and Ms. Fiorini, where they share some examples of what the AI can do with you as a modified innovation team, and then take you through the protocol. So we look forward to that. A genuine work session. Yeah.
Should we wear sweatpants?
I think so. One of those, yes, yeah.
Be here.
We're gonna sharpen our pencils. We're gonna have some fun.
Okay.
All right, well, so that is our next meeting. I think this will be very exciting. And if no one has anything else, then recommended action that the board adjourns at 9:43 PM.
Second,
All right,
I'm sorry, who was it?
it was Omar and then Anna.
On a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, motion carries. All right, thank you very